What is going on, everybody? It's Buddy here. Today I'm going to show you guys how to build this beautiful, homemade, durable, high quality shed from scratch. Now this is not going to be some junk that you're going to find at Home Depot or Lowe's or online websites like Wayfair. This is going to be a real deal, high quality shed that's going to last decades to come. I'm going to go over everything it took me to build this shed step by step, so even a beginner is going to be able to get the results that I got here. And the best thing about it, it cost me under $200 to make. I did some online research to see how much sheds pre-built just like this cost, and you can see here we're looking around $799 plus this $56 for tax. And honestly, on top of that, the quality does look pretty questionable. I also checked out some cheaper plastic resin options. This one runs $379 plus. So I'll just leave these here and you guys can decide if that's worth it. There's going to be an Amazon link in the description for the materials and the tools I use here for this job. So you can copy this build exactly, or you can just use this video as a guide to build your own size shed. So without further ado, let's jump right into the build. Now the first thing we're going to do is get these 3 2x4s tacked onto the wall with Tapcons. Now I'm going to show you guys that in 2 seconds, but I just want to note here, these 3 pieces of wood are going to dictate the height and the width of the opening of your shed. Now the distance between the inside of this left board and the inside of this right board is going to dictate the width of the opening of your shed. And the distance from the floor to the bottom of this top board here is going to dictate the height of the opening of your shed. But you also got to subtract 4 inches because we're going to have a floor to this shed that comes up 4 inches off the ground. So we're going to cut these 2 vertical boards here at 81 inches. So now we got our first board cut, it's time to tack it into the wall. And instead of trying to hold the level up to it and kind of stable it out, what we're going to do is we're going to take our level, get it nice and level, and then we're going to make a line going right here. That way we know where to put the inside of our board so we don't have to hold the level up anymore. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-drill 1 hole through the wood right here. And then I'm going to come down, I'm going to do the same thing right here. Now it's time to go back up into this original hole we just pre-drilled. Now we're going to be using Tapcons at this point. If you don't know what Tapcons are or you don't know how to use them, go ahead and check out my video. I'll leave a link in the description. I have an entire video on explaining how to use Tapcons, everything you need to know about them. So go ahead and check that out. The link will be in the description below. Now at this point, we're going to be using our hammer drill and our concrete bit. Now make sure that your Tapcon is not too long for your drill bit. This one looks perfect, so let's get right into it. We're going to line up the wood with that line that we made earlier, and we're going to go ahead and get a hole right in the concrete. And then we're going to go ahead and secure this board in the wall with our Tapcon. So now that that one's in, we can go ahead and hit this bottom one. So we got this board secured in the wall. It's time to do this one right here. Now we're going to do the exact same thing here on the right side. We're going to make sure our level's nice and level and mark where we want the inside of our board. We're going to pre-drill our 2 holes with the wood drill bit, just like we did on the left side. You definitely want to use a wooden drill bit for this and not your concrete bit. We're going to come back up to the top. We're going to line up our 2x4 with the line we made and pre-drill our concrete hole. Then we're going to screw our Tapcon straight into the concrete. So now we got our 2 sideboards in place. It's time to do the top board right here. With this top board, we're going to want it wedged between this board and this board, so we're going to measure that out. And it looks like it's 37 right at the nose. Beautiful. Now it's going to be the exact same procedure with our last 2 boards. We're going to pre-drill the wood with the wood bit. We're going to go through the concrete with our concrete bit and hammer drill. And then we're going to secure it in place with our Tapcon. Alright guys, so for this next step, this is going to determine the depth of our shed. So it's going to determine how much it comes out, essentially from the back to the front. So what we're going to do is we're going to tack boards on the bottom, in the middle, and on the top. So what you can do is grab a board here. Now I got this board coming 17 inches off of this board. So if you take your board here, just like that, you can see that is going to be the depth of the shed. So from this point on to right here, that's going to be your depth. So you don't want to choke it if you need more room. You don't want to start right here. You're not going to be able to fit all your stuff in there. So the distance from this board to the end of this board is 17 inches. So I'm going to make 6 of them right now. So we're gonna put 2 boards here, 2 boards here, and 2 boards here at the top. So the first place we're gonna start is the middle. We wanna make sure when we place this board, it is nice and flush right here. Now go ahead and pre-drill your screws in just like this. It's a lot easier to do it when it's on the ground than doing it right here. And perfect. Now we're gonna do the other side here, and it's also worth mentioning, it doesn't have to be right in the middle, just somewhere in the middle. It doesn't have to be exact by any means. All you need here at the bottom is just 1 screw going through the top. Same thing here on the other side. Got 1 screw going through the top. And we're gonna do the same thing here at the top. Make sure it's flush right here. And then we're gonna do the last one here in the corner. So this is what your shed should be looking like at this point. You should have 6 pieces of wood sticking out. Now at this point, this is totally optional, but I'm gonna put 1 piece of wood right there in the middle. All right, perfect. Time to move on to the next step. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take 2 pieces of wood, run from this board all the way up to this board, and this board all the way up to this board. Now, if you remembered from the beginning of the video, these 2 vertical boards are 81 inches tall, so we're going to cut 2 boards at 81 inches. So this board we just cut is going to be placed right here on the bottom one. It's going to be placed right here on the middle one, and the same thing here on the top. So we're going to have it nice and butted up, and you want to make sure this side is nice and flush. And we're going to continue to use 3-inch screws. We've used 3-inch screws this entire job so far, so we're keeping it real simple. And then we're going to do the same thing here at the top. Get it started, line these up, and the exact same thing here on the bottom. It's the same process here on the left side as it is on the right, so let's jump right into the left board. So at this point, this is what your framework should be looking like. Now all we gotta do with this top piece is just run 1 solid piece across. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut a piece that butts up to here, and it butts up to here just like this piece. This piece is 37 inches on the nose, and that's what we're going to cut, and then we're going to tack it to this guy. And for people who are new to framing, if you want to align it perfectly, you can always take a hammer, give it a slight tap down. Now you can't do it too much, maybe about 1/8 of an inch is the most you want to go with slamming it, but if you look here, that made it perfectly flush. Now it doesn't always need to be perfectly flush, but if you're a perfectionist, you can always give it a little tap and you can align it just right. Also guys, you do not need to put another screw in here because this is not going to be bearing any weight. Now she is all nice and framed out. The only thing we got to do to finish off the framework is to put the bottom in. Now all we're going to do for the bottom is run a board from here to here and a board from here to here. And if you guys do remember here up at the top, we did do these 2 boards, this one and this one. Those are 37. So we're going to do the same thing, 37 inches on the nose. So let's cut those out and pop them in. Now we're going to place our 2 freshly cut pieces of wood in. And we're going to stick a screw in the top. We're going to secure it down here on the left side. And we're going to secure it down here on the right side. And now that we got those 2 boards in place, it's time to run a board straight across the middle. We know this board here and this board here is 17 inches, so we're going to cut one at 17 exactly and slam it in. And we're going to go ahead and secure this guy in there. Now at this point, ladies and gentlemen, our framework is completely done. Now what we're going to do next is sheet it up with some plywood. So let's get right into that. But first, to give us some room, we're going to remove this toolbox here and this other shed. so now we got that out of the way. It's time to cut our first piece of plywood. So I just measured from here to the wall all the way to the end of this piece is 20 inches. And then we know this piece of board here comes up 81 inches exactly. So we're going to cut a piece of plywood 20 inches by 81 inches. So personally for me, this is the way that I like to measure out sheets of plywood. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come here. I'm going to measure out my 20. And then I'm going to come all the way to the end. Measure out another 20. Then I'm going to take my chalk box here. I'm going to line it up here with the 20. Keep it kind of tight so it doesn't slip off. Line it up with my other 20 here and snap a line. And then we're going to come all the way over here and zoom on in a little bit. So now we're going to go to the end and we're going to pull 81 inches. Give it a mark. We're going to take our square here and mark it down at 81 inches. And now with our chalk box, we're going to line it up to the line we just made here. We're going to go down to our 20-inch line that we made before. Make sure it's nice and lined up with this line that we made for the square. And we're just going to pop another line. Now we're going to go ahead and cut the plywood right on our chalk line. Now we're going to cut this bad boy all the way across. And this piece fits beautifully, so we're going to go ahead and screw it in. And at this point, I'm also using 2-inch screws. We want to make sure it doesn't poke on the inside of the shed when we're done. So at this point, we're using 2-inch and not 3-inch screws. Now what we're going to do is measure up another 20 inches. Another 20 inches here on the end. Then we're going to pull our chalk line. Measure our 81 inches for the height of the shed. Line up our chalk line and snap a line. Then we're going to make our cut. And we're going to do the exact same procedure to the left side as we did to our right side. We're going to screw it in with our 2-inch screws. So now that we got our shed sided up with 2 sides of plywood, it's time to work on our floor. So what we're going to do to cut a piece out for our floor, we're going to measure all the way to the wall, to the end of this piece. It looks like we're about 20 1/4. And then measuring all the way down from this piece of plywood to this piece of plywood. Looks like we got right there at 43 7/8. So again, we're going to pull our 43 7/8. Mark it with our square. We're going to come down our 20 1/4. Come all the way down to our line here. Do another 20 1/4. We're going to snap a line, and then we're going to snap our vertical line. And then we're going to make our cuts. Now obviously this board's not going to fit in there because we have these 4 boards in the way. We measured all the way from the wall, all the way here, and all the way from this piece of plywood, all the way to this piece of plywood. So we have these guys in the way. So what we're going to do is we're going to measure here. It's going to be 3.5 inches. That's how big a 2x4 is. And they also come out 1.5 inches. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this board and we're actually going to flip it. So we're going to take our speed square. And we're going to measure out 3.5 inches. And then we're going to measure this way 1.5 inches. So then we're going to make our marks. And if you look here, this is what it should look like. So we're going to go ahead and do that on all 4 corners. So you can see right here where the 2 lines intercept, we're going to go a little bit past that spot on both sides. And that's also why we're cutting out on the bottom of the board and we're not cutting on the top. You see the bottom's a little more ugly. And I'm going to show you guys exactly why we're cutting past these lines here in a few seconds. Now you can see we did go over quite a bit here on this side. But when I flip it over, you don't have those lines that go way past this cutting point. So it looks a lot cleaner. So once you repeat that process on all 4 corners, what you end up with is a beautiful fitting floor. Now we're going to go ahead and secure our floor into place. And what you can do is to mark this piece of wood, is you can just put a little piece of wood here so you know where to drill. So this is what your shed should be looking like. At this point, we're going to start working on the door. So the width of our door is going to go halfway between this 2x4 and halfway to this 2x4. The 2x4 is 3.5 inches. So 3.5 divided by 2 is 1 3/4 inches. So we're going to make an 1 3/4 line going all the way down this 2x4 and an 1 3/4 line all the way down this 2x4. So what you can either do is measure it 1 3/4 inches and measure it all the way at the bottom, another 1 3/4 and then snap a chalk line down like we did with the plywood. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my speed square here and then line right here for 1 3/4 inches. So we do the same thing on this one. And perfect. I will put a link in the description. You can grab one of these on Amazon. This is a very large one. I'll put a smaller one. These large ones are kind of cool too. So I'll just put a link for both for you guys. So now we're going to measure the distance between the lines. 40 inches and a half. Now in terms of the distance between this top 2x4 and this bottom 2x4, it comes out to roughly 77 inches, so that's what we're going to cut as well. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you do want to get it kind of close. And at this point, you guys should know how to measure the plywood by now. It's the same principle for every cut. Every cut's just a different measurement. So I'm not going to bore you guys with measuring it over and over again. I'm going to go ahead and just slam out the cuts. Now with our door nice and cut, we're going to get it in place, and we're going to stick these two 2x4s under it. And that's going to line it up with the perfect height. Now coming down to the bottom of the shed, we're going to make sure it lines up right here with our line. Perfect. We're going to just take one screw and screw it in the bottom. Now at this point, you can line it up with this line right here at the top. So we'll take this board out. Perfect. We'll throw another screw in there. And now you can see at both sides, we're looking pretty perfect with our line. Now we're going to take this 1x3 leaning up against the wall and we're going to fasten it to the side of the shed, and I'm going to show you guys why. But first, we got to cut it to 81 inches because that's the height of the shed. And we're going to do the same thing here on the other side. So now at this point, on each side of your shed, it should be looking like this. You're going to have your 3/4 inch piece, you're going to have your 1/2 inch piece of plywood or 3/4, whatever you're using, and then you're going to see half of your 2x4 going long ways. Now it's time to put a sheet of plywood right here to frame up our door. And the reason we put this piece in first is so it's all covered up nice. It doesn't look like this shed here. So after we do our dress up work with these, this piece is going to be covered and it's going to have a real clean look. So you can see measuring it comes out to 2 7/8. Don't hesitate to make it a little bit bigger because you can always sand it if it pops out a little bit. But you can't put the wood back on it once you cut it off. And also guys, we're going to be cutting this board all the way from the bottom all the way to the top. And that comes out to 81 inches exactly. Now at this point, I am going to be using a finish nailer just because I want the holes to be nice and small so it looks pretty. You can continue to use a screw gun. As you can see, I used a screw gun here on this shed. You can see those 2 screw holes. It doesn't look horrible. I just want this one to be extra pretty here. So finish nailer it is. Now also, you don't want this to be butted up too close to your door here. You want to give it a little breathing room just because the humidity will make the wood swell. So you want to give it a little tiny gap here. And with my scrap piece from the other side, I'm able to mark it from the back to get a perfect alignment with my next cut. And that gave us an absolutely perfect cut, and then we're going to nail it in with our finish nailer. Remembering to give it a couple millimeters of gap to make sure that when our wood swells up, it doesn't pinch the door. And we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to mark a line in the back to make sure we get a nice perfect cut so it fits evenly. So this is how your shed should be looking at this point. Everything is nice and framed out. Now don't worry about these screw holes here. We are going to be doing some trim work that will cover all this up. And that's how your side should look. So now we are ready to install our hinges. Now, if you want your door to open this way, obviously your hinges are going to be right here. If you want your door to open this way, your hinges are going to be on this side. I'm going to pick this right side, so let's get right up in there. Now at this point, we're going to take our hinge, make sure it is nice and level. We're going to hold it in place nice and tight. We're going to take our pencil, and we're going to mark the holes where we want to pre-drill. Then we're going to take our drill bit that is slightly skinnier than the screw that we're going to be screwing in, and we're going to pre-drill our 3 holes. Now we're going to take our hinge with our screw already inside of the hinge. We're going to line it up and screw it down. Make sure it's nice and level. And then the same thing here, we're going to pre-drill our 3 holes. And then we're just going to screw in these 2 here on the end. Because if you screw in this, it's actually going to go into the board behind this plywood. And to avoid this problem, you want to make sure you get hinges that the holes start a little farther out, because the wood comes to about right here. It's half of a 2x4. On this shed that I built over here, I was able to do that, but they didn't have any left in stock. So I'm just going to make do with what we got, which is these. Now for the screws that go on the inside part of the hinge, I'm going to cut them to about a 1/2 inch. Now you see this half screw? It's going to go inside the inside hole. You can see why we cut this screw here. If we come inside the shed, we're able to close the door all the way because it doesn't poke through like this one. It's just short enough that it holds the door in place and it doesn't smack this piece of wood right here. Now, something important that you want to note before you go and do the bottom hinge, you want to look and see how many inches away the top of this is from the top of your door. It looks like we're about 5 1/4. So we're going to do 5 1/4 distance from the bottom to our bottom hinge, and I'll show you guys that now. So we're going to take that 5 1/4 we just pulled. We're going to come up here, mark it right here at 5 1/4. That way, this is where the bottom of our hinge is going to line up. That way we make sure everything looks nice and symmetrical. So again, we're going to make sure this is nice and level, hold it nice and tight, and we're going to make our marks. Then pre-drill our holes. Now we still have these 2 boards in the side that we're going to take off now because we're going to start doing some decorative work on the sides of this shed. So now we got our miter saw out. We're going to be mitering the boards that we're going to be putting up here so it looks something like this. Now if you don't have a miter saw, you can always just butt them up. It doesn't look terrible like this, but I'm going to do it like this, have them nice and mitered and pretty. So these 2 boards we just took off are already cut to length, so I'm just going to go ahead and put a 45-degree angle on both sides. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this board all the way in the back here, just because it has the screw holes in it. I don't want to be right here in the forefront. So we're going to take our finish nailer here. Now a quick tip, I don't always tack in right here just because I want a little bit of wiggle room. So when I put my next miter cut, I'll be able to adjust it and get them to sit perfectly with each other. And I'll show you guys what I'm talking about here in a second. So the next piece we're going to cut is going to be the piece that runs parallel with this board, all the way up. So I'm going to start by taking a full piece and just cutting it at a 45-degree angle. So what I did, because I know the shed is 81 inches, I measured all the way from the tip of this board, pulled 81 inches, and it comes out to right here. And I also made a little line going this way, just knowing which angle I got to cut it at. So I got to twist my miter saw. And then I'm going to make my cut. So from this corner here to this corner here is 81 inches exactly. Now again, we're going to take this piece, line it on up, and we're going to go around in the middle. You don't want to go towards the end. I told you that on the last one, but I'm going to show you guys here in a second why. Now what we're going to do is we're going to measure from the tip of one board to the other. Looks like it's at 20 inches exactly, so that's what we're going to cut. So we're going to start here by just mitering out the end. Now that we got that cut, we're going to take it from this end, and we're going to pull down all the way to 20. And then it needs to be angled this way. I'm going to turn my miter saw, and then I'm going to make my cut. Now the reason I said don't nail it up here is because you're going to be able to move this around to get this to fit perfectly. So it looks like it fits perfectly. All we got to do is push it out just a little bit, and then just tack it in. You got a nice small crack right here. Nail it in the rest of the way. So I didn't put any nails here towards the bottom just because I want this little bit of wiggle room here. That way I'm going to be able to get a perfect fit here with this last board. And it looks like we're at 20 inches exactly, so that's what we're going to cut. So I'm going to mark it at 20, and I know it needs to be cut this way. So I'm just going to make a line there. We're going to twist our miter saw and make our cut. And here's a perfect reason why we don't nail this part in. You can see it won't fit unless we push this in. And then we can just squeeze it in there real nice and tight. Give us a nice small seam here. Now that we got this framed out all nice and pretty, we're going to put one board straight down the middle. So we're going to measure from the top of this board to the bottom of this board. It looks like it's at 76 1/4. Now before I just slam this middle piece in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my tape measure. I'm going to measure right here between this board and this board. And it looks like it's at 15 inches exactly. So half of 15 is 7.5. So we're going to take our pencil, put 7.5, and give it a quick mark. We're going to take our board, line it up here with that mark, and tack it in. Then we do the same thing. We're going to line it up, 7.5. And then we'll come all the way up. So this is what we're looking like after we got that installed. Now I put these two boards in there just so you guys can see what it looks like. I don't like that look. I'm just going to keep it simple, and I'm going to take these out. I think this is a lot cleaner of a look, but obviously the choice is yours what kind of design you want to go. And you can really see the difference of how this looks compared to how this looks. This is very bland. It really dresses it up. Just a couple of quick cuts. It really makes it look a lot nicer. So we're going to do the exact same thing that we just did to this side. So now that we got this side all done and this side all done, it's time to start working on our roof. So we're going to come to the side and we're going to measure the depth of the shed. It looks like it is 20 7/8. So now what we're using is a 2x6. You can use a 2x4, you can use a 2x8. The wider the piece of wood, the more slope your roof's going to have on it. I think 2x6 looks the best here, so that's what I'm going to use. We're going to pull at 20 7/8 like we just measured. We're going to make our line. Now we're going to cut at our line. And then we're going to take our chalk line and we're going to pull it from one corner to the other corner. Then we're going to snap our line, and that's what we're going to be cutting. And it fits up here perfectly, so we're going to take an 1 5/8 screw and we're going to screw it in about here. And then we're going to take a 3-inch screw, screw it in about here. And then we're going to take a 3.5-inch screw and we're going to screw it in about here. And the best thing about this, you can just use this piece for the other side. We're going to do our short screw, our long screw, and our really long screw. So at this point, it's time to put a piece of plywood going from this side to this side. Now the shed is 46.5 inches wide, and I like to have a little bit of overhang, maybe 2 inches on each side. I'm just going to do a 48-inch piece because that's an even piece of plywood. But I think it looks best when you do 2 inches of overhang on each side. Now in terms of how much overhang you want on your roof is going to depend, because if you put too much, your door is obviously going to hit your roof. So what I'm going to do is about 5 inches of overhang. It should look nice, and it's also going to give my door enough clearance to open up. So about 5 inches where I want it, I'm just going to measure to about right here. And also be sure you're holding your board at the right angle so you can get an accurate measurement. Now once you made sure your overlap on this side and overlap on this side is exactly the same, we're going to go in and we're going to put 3 screws on each side. Now after you got your plywood roof up, you're going to want to find a piece that's slightly longer than your piece of plywood. So you can see we got our board hanging over a little bit. So we're going to come on in here, and here towards the wall, you'll see we'll have a little gap here, just because this is at an angle. So what we're going to want to do to correct that is we're going to take our level, and we're going to go from right here to the corner. We're going to go straight down, make sure our level reads even, and we're going to want to make a mark going straight down. So you can see I made the mark. Unfortunately, I don't have 3 arms, so I couldn't do it on camera. But all I did, like I said, is take this right here at this corner of this piece of wood, make sure it was nice and level, and I made my mark. So now we're going to make our cut on that line. You can see there, it fits nice and flush against the wall, and it comes down perfectly. Now we're going to take that piece, we're going to butt it up right here, and we're going to make a mark right here on the inside. So we have our piece that's going against the wall right here. We're going to cut this piece at a 45-degree bevel. So now what you want to do is you want to take a scrap piece, and we're going to place it right here, flush with this piece of plywood. And then we're going to take our piece that we just cut, we're going to line it up against the wall, and we want it to be flush at the top right here with our piece of scrap wood. So just like that, everything looks good, and we're going to go ahead and nail it in. And make sure you don't nail it into this piece, you want to nail it into your actual plywood here. And it's going to be the exact same process for the other side. So our roof is coming together nicely. So what I'm going to do at this point is take a measurement from this corner to this corner, and it looks like it is 49.5. So I'm going to start here by making a 45-degree beveled cut on the end. Take this end here and pull 49.5 and make my mark. I'm going to make my cut with the same bevel angle. Now it's the same process on the front as it is on the sides. We're going to go ahead and line it up and make it flush with this board. Make sure we're good on both of our sides. So now our roof is framed out. You can see it's starting to come together really nice. So we got one more step to finish off the roof. So now that our roof is framed out, we're going to cut 5 pieces the distance from the wall to the inside of this piece of wood. Looks like mine is 26 inches, so we're going to cut 5 pieces at 26 inches long. So now that we got our 5 boards cut here, we're going to do some measuring and make some marks. So the first thing we're going to do is measure from the inside of this board to the inside of this board. Pull that, it looks like that's 48 inches, so half of 48 is 24. So we're going to mark right here at 24 inches, and then we're going to split this into third. So 24 divided by 3 is 8. So we're going to mark at the 16. We're also going to mark at the 8. We do the exact same thing for the other side. We're going to mark at the 8, and we're going to mark at the 16. So what those marks are going to indicate is where we're going to put the center of our boards to make sure they're evenly gapped. And it should look just like this. Now we're going to go ahead and tack all those boards down. And also be sure they're straight when you're doing it. Now everything is starting to come together quite nice. Now it's time to work on our door. So we're going to start here on the easy side of our door. It's 77 inches tall, so we're going to make a 45-degree mitered cut at 77 inches. So I found a scrap piece with a cut already in it. So I'm going to measure from this tip all the way down to 77 inches. Then we're going to nail this board in just in the middle. We want our ends to have a little bit of play, just so we can make sure we have the perfect corners. Now going to the top right corner of the shed, we're going to find a piece of scrap. We're going to place it up right here in the corner, and then we're going to make a mark right here where a hinge starts. And then we're going to make our cut. And it looks like it's a perfect fit, so we're going to hit it with our nail gun. Now it's time to measure this top piece. Looks like we're at 40 1/4. And this is why we leave this one a little loose. That way we can play with it here. Make sure everything fits nice and tight. So now that we got these 3 pieces in, it's time to work on this piece right here between 2 hinges. It's just a straight edge cut on both sides, pretty easy on this one. We do the same thing here to the bottom piece as we did to the top piece. And lastly, we're going to do our bottom piece. Now with this side, I did say leave this side loose, that way you can get it nice and perfect, just like that. Now our door is all framed out, starting to look real pretty. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut 3 strips at 72 1/4 because that's what it is from the inside of this board to the inside of this board. So it's 35 1/2 from the inside of this board to the inside of this board. 35 1/2 divided by 2 comes out to 17 3/4. So we made a mark right there at 17 3/4, and we did the exact same thing here at the bottom. So we're going to line up the center of the board with that 17 3/4 inch mark that we made, and then we're going to tack it on the top. We're going to do the same thing, make sure the center of the board touches that 17 3/4 inch mark, and then we're going to tack that in too. Now we're going to take the distance from here to here. Looks like it is 16 1/4, so it's going to be 8 1/8. And it's going to be the exact same method on the second board as it was on the first. And last but not least, tack in your third board. And as you guys can see, our shed is looking beautiful as of now. All we need to do is put on our locking mechanism, give it a good sand and stain, so let's get right back into it. Now it's time to grab our locking mechanism, and we're going to center it with this board, and we're going to make our marks in the holes. And again, we're going to take a drill bit slightly smaller than the diameter of the screw we're going to be using to secure it. Then we're going to line up our pilot hole with our screw and secure it in. Now we're going to do the same thing with the handle. We're going to make sure it's nice and centered and make our marks. So coming back to our lock, we're going to make sure that this lines up perfectly with this, and we also need a board here just to make sure everything is nice and level. So it looks like coming out, this is exactly where we want this to be, so we're going to nail this piece of board in there. So it's the exact same procedure. We make our marks. So at this point, guys, our carpentry work is done. It's looking pretty nice if I don't say so myself. So the next step here is just to put some wood stain on it. So in terms of our stain, I like using this brand's Stain and Poly. It's one step, you get a nice seal on there and a nice stain as well, so I definitely recommend this. And I'm going to put a link for everything in the description so you guys can grab this stuff on Amazon if you want. Now you can use a hand sander, you can use a pad sander, or an orbital sander. I'm going to be using the orbital because it is the quickest. I'm going to put a cheap one in the link in the description on Amazon. Honestly, this one's 80 bucks, this one's 15, 20 bucks. This one works just as well. I don't see the need in spending the money on a really expensive sander. And also the grit of sandpaper we're going to be using, we're going to start with 120 just to get kind of the heavier grain off of there, and then we're going to go down to a 220 grit. So let's jump right into it. Now if you did what I did, I actually used some scrap plywood I had laying around the garage. You can see it has a moldy look to it. It's black, it's kind of water stained. So I'm going to use a heavier grit like 60 just to take out that old plywood look and get the fresh wood look showing underneath. Now also any ink spots you're going to find on your wood, you're definitely going to want to take those out with the 60 grit as well before you even start with the 120. Now with any kind of aggressive wood grain like this from the factory, you're going to want to hit this with the 60 grain before you go up to your 120. And next we're going to start with the 120. Now you don't need to go around and try and sand everything down thoroughly. This is to get splinters or any uneven grain wood nice and smooth. So just one pass over with the sander is going to do the trick. Now it's time to go back over everything with our 220 and smooth everything out. Now the next step here, we're going to go ahead and blast the shed with the leaf blower and get most of the dust out of the way. Next step, you're going to take a tack cloth. In my case, I'm using a no lint microfiber cloth. And we're going to go ahead and wipe off all the dust we can off of this shed. I recommend starting from the top because if you knock any loose dust off, it's going to fall down. So it's definitely better to start from the top and work your way down than start from the bottom and work your way up. We're going to take our poly stain and we're going to pop the can open and stir it around for a few minutes. And with this stuff, do not shake it. Go ahead and get you a stir and stir it around for at least 30 seconds. Now once it's all stirred up, we're going to get a clean brush. You really should use a clean brush for this. And we're going to take our stain poly and we're just going to brush a nice light layer on there. Now the reason I use this stuff instead of actually staining, you don't got to put this on, wipe it off, nothing like that. You literally just brush it on, make sure it's nice and even, and that's it, you're done. So it's really hard to mess this up. It's pretty easy to mess up a staining job if you're not good at actual stain, but this stuff's pretty dummy proof, so I definitely recommend it. And as I said before, the most important thing is just to get this very light and very even, because if you don't get it even, you're going to have dark spots. We're also going to be doing 2 coats with this. Now I got a gloss look. You can actually get this in flat so it just looks colored and not shiny, but I'm definitely a fan of the high gloss look. And don't worry about getting this on your hinges. If anything, it's just extra protection so they don't rust in the future. And it's pretty hard to mess it up. Just remember, you always want to make sure that you get a nice even coat. So let's check out what the finished result looks like. And this shed came out absolutely beautiful. You can't even buy a shed of this quality at any home improvement store. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future projects. I have a lot more to come, and also definitely consider hitting that thumbs up button if you did enjoy this build. Until next time, you guys have a great one.